Hello, beautiful souls. I am Dr. Atoya Hodges, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. And I have had this class that I wrote about in 2018, no, 2019. And it has been sitting here, and I have spent the last few years really just spending time helping people set themselves free. And it occurred to me a couple of weeks ago when I was doing some teaching and I referenced this class and I'm like, you know what? This is such an amazing class to put out into the world to help people learn how to set themselves free. And so, as a hypnotherapist and a spiritual healer, a spiritual teacher, an energy healer, an ordained minister, I have spent my life taking in how to help people heal, and I've supported thousands of people over my past 25 years of counseling. I've put in the time and the education to really, really be able to be transformational in a lot of individuals. And when I wrote this class, I was in one of my darkest places. I was in prison, and writing this class helped me set myself free. And then I implemented this class in prison, and this class is still happening in prison, helping other individuals set themselves free. And so I'm excited to share this with you. And so, to all that hear this, whenever you hear this, know that I am sending this message to you from a place of love and compassion. And I hope that it resonates with you and that you get the clarity and the understanding that you're seeking, and that during this class that you do set yourself free from the internal prison and the bondages that are holding you back from truly experiencing the life you desire. So, with that, let's go ahead and let's jump into class one. And class one is about accountability and realization that you are not in control of your life, that God and Creator is in control of your life. Okay. So, let's start right now. So, part of accountability is that we have to really sit down and admit our weaknesses. And we so often feel that if we're vulnerable, then we're not safe, and vulnerability is risky. And it can be scary to lower our defenses and open up our life to others, because there's been times where we felt that we opened up ourselves and we were harmed by it. So that makes us scared. So we build this wall, hence the prison. We build this wall around ourselves, right? Because our fear is that if we reveal our failures and our frustrations and our feelings, then and our deep rooted fears, then what happens? We risk rejection. And that's the last thing any of us want, because rejection hurts. But when I can sit here and tell you wholeheartedly from the thousands of people that I've worked with over the past 25 years, the benefits of being vulnerable outweigh the risk. They are worth it. Because here's the thing, when people tell me, because we're taught that as children, if you're vulnerable, then that's a sign of weakness. I've never yet seen one person that is vulnerable be weak. It is weak to always pretend you're strong. Being vulnerable is the strongest thing that we can ever do, right? And being vulnerable is very liberating. When I tell you, when you can admit these things, first of all, to yourself, because so often we pretend these things are not here. But When we open up to others, when I tell you it relieves the stress and diffuses our fears, and I promise you, it is the first step to your freedom. Okay. And with God, God gives us grace to be humbled, really. And humility is not putting yourself down and denying your strengths. Rather, it is being honest about your weakness. And the more honest you are, the more God's grace you'll get. You'll also receive grace from others because vulnerability is a very enduring quality. We are naturally drawn to humble people, and that's what happens when you become vulnerable. You will notice that your relationships get stronger because when you become vulnerable and you begin to talk and you begin to show people what is really going on behind this beautiful face of yours, but what is really going on the inside of you, then what happens is those people can let their guard down. And when they let their guard down, then your connection is built on seeing people for who they really are and what they're actually dealing with. Because I promise you, everybody is dealing with something. We learn to put on this beautiful face to present, but on the insides, we're broken. I recently put up a picture on social media where it was this mirror of this apple. And in the mirror, the reflection of the apple was beautiful and whole. But on the back side of the apple, it was eaten. And I asked people, what does this symbolize to you? And most people stated the same thing, that we present the best side of ourselves while hiding what we deem as the imperfect part of us. All of us have that, right? And so at some point of our life, we must decide whether we want to impress people or do we want to influence people. The way that we build our credibility is not pretending to be perfect, but by being honest, right? You know, when I was at my lowest point, I pretended I was okay to the point to where I tried to commit suicide because I was so broken and I was such in a dark place, and I felt like I was already a burden to people because they're watching this entire destruction of my life that I had built being destroyed. We're all sitting here watching it fall, but I didn't know how to let people know how broken I was. I felt like I needed to pretend that it was all okay, but in essence, deep down, I knew it was going to be okay. But once I opened up and said, hey, this is not good, I'm not in a good place, it allowed me to completely just be vulnerable and just give it to everybody. Like, hey, this is what's going on inside of me right now. And the love and the support and the community that I needed showed up. And it was beautiful because then I realized I was not alone in this process because they began to open up, right? So in the Bible, Paul said, I'm going to boast only about how weak I am and how great God is to use weakness for his glory. Now, we all know that the world and Satan points out our weaknesses and agree with him to fill our hearts with praise for Jesus, who understands every weakness is ours, and for the Holy Spirit, who helps us through our weakness. Now, so many people pray, and that used to be my thing. Was like, we're praying for all of this, but yet we're not changing our actions and our behaviors and our beliefs and our thoughts to be open to receiving the grace. right? We're not open to receiving the answers. It's like we can see that if we keep doing these things, it's harming us. It's we're lying to ourselves. So part of this first step in doing your or freeing yourself is to accept the accountability and the realizations that you have to do this. You have to face these things that are hurting you. You have to face it. But then, more importantly, is the realization that you're really not in control of your life, that God is. And as we begin our journey of accountability, we first have to admit that we are powerless to control our hurts and our hangups and our habits, that our lives have become out of control and unmanageable. And in this, we have to face these two questions that I want you to dig down deep and ask yourself. Are you wearing a mask of denial? And what do you really have control over? Because as we begin this this recovery journey of who we present to be, we first must to admit our ways and remove the mask. And I know for me, growing up, I grew up in domestic violence, in a home of domestic violence. And we were taught very early never tell people anything that's going on in our home. So I learned to put that mask on at a very early age because I had to pretend like everything was always okay and that what was happening at home really wasn't happening. So I was taught to live that lie. And I'm sure most people, when I work with most of my clients, all of us were taught that we don't share what's going on at home with outside people. But yet it was never safe for us to share what was going on inside the home either, because we were all living in this lie. And I know that we have fears, you know, and we have these fears of becoming accountable. Because what happens, when we expose ourselves. The fear of exposure makes us different. People would know things about you that you fear. We feel that if we tell people these things, they may not like us. But here's the thing, do you want people to be around you because of what they think and what you're portraying that is untruthful? Or do you want people there because you're being honest? I hear so many people say, I can't trust people. Okay, you can't trust you because you know what you're hiding. You know what you're keeping away from everybody. So if you know that about you, then how can you trust somebody else? Because if neither one of you are being open and honest and vulnerable and exposing these things about you, then you both are keeping secrets. So how can you trust anybody? You can't. It's impossible because you don't trust you. And as an energy person, what we put out, we get back. So if I have a trust issue within myself because I know that I'm not being true to me, then how do I expect you to be trustworthy? Like when I ask people to give me their values or what they expect from people and they list integrity and honesty, then I turn it and say, well, show me where you're out of alignment and integrity within yourself. Show me where you're being honest to you. And most people can't. And that's normal and it's okay. It's liberating to finally to be able to admit these things, especially to yourself. Okay. Fear causes us to hide, right? And when we hide, we become we become distant from creator. We become distant to our family. We self isolate, right? And everybody I ever worked with, their deepest need is to be loved, right? But our biggest fear is people to not love us or see us for who we really are. But if we're hiding from people and we're hiding from ourselves, then how do we really be open for people to love us? They don't know who we really are because we don't know who we really are. And then we feel ashamed and we cover up who we really are and we create an image that we're all put together and we're not. And we fear the disapproval, which makes us defensive. And the more critical and perfectionist we try to be, right? Because the more we try to be critical and the more perfection that we try to do, then that creates a bigger fear of disapproval. And the end result is we have to stop faking it and face it. Creator wants us to accept responsibility. Okay? So in the Bible, Jeremiah 6:14 says, "They dress the wound of my people as though it was not serious. Peace, peace, they say, but there is no peace." So think about that in your life. Think about how you dress the wound as though what you're feeling is not that serious. But then you want peace. You can't get peace if you keep ignoring and pretending that these things are not there. Okay? Denial says we cannot heal hurts, habits, or hangups by pretending they're not there. Right? So I'm going to give you 6 negative effects of denial. Disable our feelings. D for denial. We disable our feelings. They promise freedom while they themselves are slaves of lying. For a man is a slave to whatever has mastered him. The Bible states that in 2 Peter. He talks about we promise freedom, but yet we, we're slaves to our lying. We want freedom, we want peace, but we slave to this perfect perception that is not true, and that becomes our master. The the lying becomes our master. Okay. The second effect, the E of denial, the energy drain, right? It says in Psalms 146, he upholds the cause of the oppressed and gives food to the hungry. The Lord sets prisoners free. The Lord gives sight to the blind, and the Lord lifts up those who are bowed down. The Lord loves the righteous. For me, when I read that, what that means to me is that when we become honest with ourselves and accept and be accountable for us being in the prison, that we can be set free, that we can turn these things over, because this drains our energy and it moves us into the next negative effect, that it ignites our growth, right? We can't grow if we continue to stay in this distress. We can't grow if we stay in the darkness. So we have to break free from those chains that is holding us back, that is draining our energy, that is disabling our feelings, which goes into the next effect of isolating us. Because Not only do we isolate ourselves from people, we also isolate ourselves from Creator. And when we isolate ourselves, we don't receive what it is that we want. It's we often block ourselves from hope because we're afraid of the disappointment. And as I teach my clients and my students, I say to them, open your eyes to the to removing what you view things or how they're supposed to turn out. Like, we all have expectations, and when then things don't show up the way we expected it to, we're disappointed. But if we change our viewpoint of what an expectation is and change our expectation to, I have an expectation to be open and move through life with faith that whatever happens is for my best and highest good, then I can't be disappointed. I can reignite my hope. And then what that does is that stops me from being so isolated from people and Creator. It accelerates my growth. It gives me energy. It allows me to be in tune with my feelings, right? And it prevents me from alienate myself from other relationships. Because once I can trust me, then I can trust others. Now, what happens is in the final six is that it lengthens our pain. Like, we often feel like we're the outcasts and no one cares about us. But if we recognize it and step into it, then we can heal the pain and we can restore our health, right? And how does this show up? So, okay, y'all, I'm 50, so hot flashes. I'm feeling them like I'm sweating all over the place. So just ignore that. But see, honesty, I'm being honest, right? All right. So when we think about denial and we disable our feelings, what does that look like? Like, if we're hiding our feelings, if we're stuffing them down, if we're living in denial, we freeze our emotions and this binds us. So allowing ourselves to feel and then understand those feelings is where we begin to find freedom. You know, I just taught some high school students and I showed them how to do bioenergetic shaking, which is a modality I absolutely love. And the reason I show that is because when I was working on my PhD, one of the things that it taught us is that humans are the only people that hold in their emotions, right? For example, if you see a dog almost get hit by a car, they run, and as soon as they're feeling like they're safe, you see them shake. And what they're doing is they're shaking out the fear, and then they continue on about life as if that never happened. We as humans don't do that. If something happens to us, we just store it and then we build up a wall. It's like we add a brick to the wall that says, yep, nope, not going to let that happen again. Not processing the real feelings or understanding the feelings, right? And so this is important for us that when we feel something, if I feel sad, I sit in the sadness and I understand why am I sad? And then I free it. I'm like, okay, I'm sad because this happened. Why am I sad? I dig into it. I keep asking myself why until I get to the bottom belief, because most of the time it's attached to something that happened to us in our childhood or to a more traumatic experience in our life. And most people think traumatic is something major. Sometimes we can hold a trauma that's simple when we look back on it as an adult that happened to us as a child. But until we heal that and recognize it, it's going to keep making decisions in our life, right? Energy drain, a major side effect of denial is anxiety. How many of us suffer from anxiety, right? So, anxiety causes us to waste precious energy dealing with the past hurts and failures, as well as the fear of the future. I tell everybody that anxiety is the fear of the future. And when we learn, as we become more accountable, then we can be more positive, and positive changes occur only in the present. The truth is, the only way to break free from tyranny of fears and worries is we have to just hand it over to Creator. Like, you know what? I can't deal with this. So some of the tips that I teach when I talk to individuals about anxiety is number one, write down your fears, right? Write it down. I'm afraid to do this because of fear of failure or fear of this. Write down what you fear. Then come up with two solutions to prevent that from happening. If I fear going out on a date with someone because I'm afraid that I might get hurt, well, what can I do to prevent that? What boundaries can I create? What can I do to make sure that that doesn't happen? All right. That's number one. Number two is keep your mind where your feet are at. So, one thing that I've incorporated in my life is that every morning when I wake up, I realize I was renewed with a whole 24 hours, right? I can't spend my 24 hours on anything that happened yesterday because the hours don't go backwards. And I can't take and worry about spending any of my 24 hours on the future because I can't take those hours to the future. So the 24 hours that I have, I use those and I focus on those. Now, what I can do is I can take from the experience of yesterday of what worked and what didn't work to make sure that I don't repeat that same pattern, that if it's harming me. The things that didn't work, I don't want to keep that pattern to continue for allowing things not to work for me. That's where we get caught up in this place of our energy being drained when we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result, right? So that's how we break free of this, right? How does this negate our growth? To be quite honest, I know for me, I was sick of all my freaking secrets. I wanted to get rid of them. I didn't want them anymore because I realized that I could not grow until I step out of the darkness of my own denial, right? And what I realized when I was in physical prison, that I finally was able to be free of my internal prison. And I was able to do that by Creator because Creator was waiting to lead me out of the darkness. I just had to be set still. So I was able to hear because I had so many voices in my head, like all of these filled with self doubt and all self destruction, all of these voices, all the negative talk was so loud that I really couldn't hear what Creator was trying to tell me. Like, I'm sitting here asking to heal my body, but yet I continue to do things that were harming my body. I couldn't hear the messages. And what I learned is that God never wasted a hurt for me. And my darkness was not wasted. But I couldn't it couldn't be used to help me until I was there to admit it. I had to admit me losing everything I'd worked all those years for and me going to prison. I had to admit that, yeah, I might have not necessarily created a crime, but I created a whole bunch of other stuff that was harmful to me. and I kept ignoring the messages. And I had to realize that sitting in that prison helped me discover me. So it was worth it, even though it was dark and even though it was hard to go through it. But I had to sit there and admit that I created the foundation that led me to where I was at. That my chase for money and success and status allowed me to have a single hand focus. So I wasn't looking at anything that was going on around me that was potentially putting me in a situation that I ended up in. I couldn't see none of that because I wasn't paying attention to it because I was too busy focused on other stuff. And this isolation, not only from creator, but from everybody else, right? When we admit our things and we acknowledge it, then light can be shined on the truth and it heals us. But while we're in denial, that keeps us in the darkness of isolation. And how many times have you tried to negotiate with yourself or rationalize why you're doing what you're doing, even though you know it's not right? And there's a part of us that we feel like, well, if we don't admit it, then it really doesn't exist, right? Oh, it does exist. Promise you. It doesn't go nowhere. And the more we try to run from it, the more we fuel it fire, and the bigger the fire gets, and to the point it burns us down. And that's what we want to prevent. All right. And then it alienates us from other relationships. Denial tells us that we're getting away with our secrets. And while denial may shield us from the full force of the hurt, it also prevents us from helping ourselves or people that we love the most. And we don't dare to reveal our true selves to others for the fear that what they think or say, if they would catch a glimpse of the real us, we're convinced that they wouldn't love us. And we're convinced we have to protect ourselves and our secrets at any cost. So, how does that equate to what's happening in real life? We isolate ourselves to minimize the risk of exposure and the possible rejection of others. But at what price do we pay? We're hurt, we're lonely, we're isolated. And all we really want is for someone to love us and accept us. We want to share our love. We want to have happiness and enjoyment and peace and freedom. But yet we sit in this isolation thinking we're protecting ourselves, but we're not. We're harming ourselves. We're neglecting ourselves. We're abusing ourselves. And why are we doing that? Why do we feel unworthy to be loved? Because most times, this is when I realized that I hated myself. I hated who I was because I didn't know who I was. I hated this image that I created because it wasn't truthful and I was out of alignment with my values and within myself and within connecting to creator. I was not in alignment and I was miserable and I was paying the price with my freedom. I was paying the price with my health. And it damaged so many of my relationships with people. And it lengthens our pain. We cling to this false belief that denial protects us from pain. But in reality, it allows our wounds to fester and grow and multiply by the hurt, by piling on all of these unbearable layers of shame. And when we finally face it and suppress the fear and deal with the denial and realization and stepped into the realization of our past, then we're able to restore our health and heal our wounds. When we face our issues and work through the hurt and be able to see the lessons. Now, I'm not going to tell you that going to look at these things don't hurt. And we often feel like, well, if I ignore it, it'll go away. It doesn't go away. Or we fear that, well, if I open up and I face it, then I'm scared because who am I going to be if I'm no longer hurt? How do I protect myself? But what you don't realize is that hurt is making the decisions in your life that keep you continually being hurt. You're not going to get the things that you want because the pain is crippling you, it's holding you hostage. So I'm telling you, it's time to break free. It's time to set yourself up, right? So going back to the Bible, looking at Hebrews 12:1, it offers us a challenge none of us can afford to ignore. Because for many of us, through past hurts, hangups, and habits, they're holding us back and tripping us up. We may be stuck in a mode of bitterness over what someone has done to us, how they continue, and we continue to hold on to pain and refusing to forgive those who are responsible, including ourselves. And in all fairness, some of us have been hurt deeply. Perhaps we were abused or as a child, or maybe our spouse committed adultery, or, maybe someone just was brutal to us. But it's important to understand that holding on to that hurt and being unwilling to forgive the person who has injured you in the past only allows them to continue hurting you today. I promise you, they're probably not over there thinking about how they hurt you. And if they are, they're having to deal with that in their own way. So, by starting to work on your own recovery, we can give we can give into creator's power and begin to find the courage and the strength to forgive the guilty party, forgive ourselves. Because when we're bound by guilt, we keep beating ourselves up over the past failures. We are trapped. We're stuck fast in a self reproach and shame. We reason that no one else anywhere could be as bad as we are, and that no one could love the real us or forgive us for the terrible things that we've done in the past. And let me tell you something. You're wrong. You're wrong. Because Creator can forgive you. Creator accepts you. When we beat ourselves up, that's like telling God he made a mistake by creating you. And I don't know about you, but that's not a conversation I'm going to have. And when we accept ourselves and accept all the things that we've gone through, and knowing that we did what we thought was best at that time, because we didn't know any different. We didn't know how it was going to turn out until it turned out, right? I'm going to have to start using a napkin and sweat like crazy. Anyway, so the thing is when we let go, and if we want to be free from our hurts and our hangups and our habits and our behaviors, we need to deal with the past bitterness and guilt once and for all, right? So in Isaiah, it says, forget the formal things I dwell on in the past. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that we ignore the past. Instead, it means that we need to learn from our past offers and the things that we did. We need to learn from our past and offer forgiveness and make amends. In doing so, we break its hold on us. And some of us are probably trapped in the fear of the future. And we may worry about what's coming next and be afraid to change. So we are naturally apprehensive about things to which we have no control over. The truth is tough. It is. And we can say with confidence that I am not going to be afraid because this is what I know for certain. No matter what you've experienced in life, you've accomplished it, you've made it, you survived it because you're still standing. So, no matter what it is that you face in the future, walk in with that confidence to know that I'm going to be okay, that I'm going to survive it. Okay. And then if you don't survive it and you're dead, then you don't have to worry about the future because you're not here anymore, which we're all going to die, and unfortunately, but that's just part of life, right? So some of us have been estranged, right? We just kept our hurts and our habits for so long that they've intertwined with our identity. So we've become accustomed to them. And as much as I hate to say this, we actually become comfortable with them. And what happens is we confuse what we've done or who we are. It's just the reality. But what will happen if you really became accountable? That's a question to ask yourself. Will I change? If I give up my old hurts, hang ups, and habits and excuses, then who will I become? Who will I be? What would be left of me? So, just as God gives us unconditional love, power, grace, and complete forgiveness, we need to be open to accept that and give that to ourselves. The same way you're compassionate to others, you need to be compassionate to yourself. The same way that you offer unconditional love to others, you need to offer unconditional love to you. We don't have to let our past failures or fears stop us from completing the process. Okay? Remember that the whole world has stumbled over a hurt, a hang up, a habit, a behavior. But your race isn't over. You're still in it. And last time I checked, God isn't really interested in how we start the race as in how we finish it. So, questions that I want you to answer. I want you to get out your journal and I want you to write this. What past hurts are you holding on to? What past hurts are you holding on to? What past or present actions make you feel guilty? What past or present actions make you feel guilty? What are you afraid to change in your life? Why? What are you afraid to change in your life and why? What are your fears about the future and why? So I want you to answer those and you will see me when you finish this one on our lesson that will be recorded and put up tomorrow. And with that, I offer you love and grace. May you find peace in your healing journey and know that you are loved. And if you need anything, know that I am here reach out to me, message me, and know that you are deserving and you are worthy to receive love, happiness, joy, and peace. Until next time, I will see you later.